Hello, my name is Maddie, or Books with Maddie, and today we're doing August wrap-up. Okay, so today we are wrapping up all of the books that I read in August. I read all of the books that I was supposed to read for Deck of TBR, so we will go over those and rank them. And I also read a couple extras, so my total number of books that I read this month is 7 books, which I'm pretty happy with because I am desperately falling behind in my reading challenge for this year. I've set a goal of 100 books, and I'm not even to 50 yet. I think I'm 23 books behind schedule at this current moment, so trying to squeeze in a lot of books. So I'm gonna go over the books that I read that were not part of Deck of TBR, which I think there were only 2, and then I will go over the books that I did read for Deck of TBR. Okay, so first I have Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, which I listened to as an audiobook, so I will have a picture here because I don't have a physical copy of it. And I really loved this book. It's really difficult to explain, but the best I can say is basically it takes place in this reality where there is a kind of unknown ecosystem called Area X that really hasn't been explored, and the Southern Reach, which I guess is like either like a scientific company or is it a place? I don't know. But they're basically sending expeditions into this Area X. They are all comprised of a surveyor, a biologist, a linguist, a anthropologist, and a psychologist. And so it basically is following the biologist on one of these expeditions, and it follows her experience going into Area X and what she kind of goes through there. It is really interesting. It sounds like a little bit more science fiction heavy than I feel like it actually is. And while there is like a lot of like kind of alien, extraterrestrial, kind of monstrous elements to it, it's very beautifully written, and it talks a lot about kind of the experience of being a human. And so I found this book like really intriguing, and it's very short. It was only a couple hours to listen to on audio, and I really enjoyed it. I listened to it in like 3 sittings. I loved it. I'm definitely going to try to continue with this series, and I think there also is a movie that came out about it, which I would really be interested to see. Oh, my rating. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and I absolutely loved it. I can't wait to continue with the other books in the series. The other book that I read for not Deck of TBR was Roomies by Christina Lauren. I'm working on a little bit of a Christina Lauren video, and so I'm reading a lot of their backlist books, and I loved Roomies. I didn't know what to expect going into it. I've literally only read 2 Christina Lauren books at this point in time, and I love both of them. I've read Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating and In a Holidays, and I've loved both of those books so much, but I've heard mixed reviews about Roomies and some of their other books, and so I didn't really know what to expect going in, but I really enjoyed it a lot. The premise of this book is basically there is a girl named Holland. She lives in New York City. Her uncle is a really famous composer and conductor for this huge Broadway show, and her lead violinist kind of drops out, and so they need to find a new lead instrumental part for this musical, which is a huge part of Holland and her uncle's lives. And so basically through a lot of twists and turns, she ends up marrying a guitarist who is illegally in the country so that he can get a green card. Is that what it is? It's like a green card marriage, which is super illegal to do, but they try to do it, and so they kind of have like marriage of convenience, which is one of my favorite tropes of all time. But it is really, what I found really different about this book from all of Christina Lauren's other books is how high the tensions were and how high the stakes were. A lot of times in their other books, the stakes would be like, oh, will they, won't they, like, will they be together? But for this one, the stakes were much higher. The stakes were a huge Broadway musical. If this guy can stay in the United States, like, the stakes were so real and vivid, and I loved that. There was a lot of, like, really intense moments where it was like, are they gonna get through this? Like, this interview, are they going to get the paperwork in time? And that was kind of cool. I know a lot of people criticized it for not being as romance heavy as they wanted it to be, but I found the balance between romance and then like actual plot to be like pretty much perfect. The end of it, where, you know, like in the third act of every romance there's like some kind of tension, breakup, miscommunication situation. I thought that was really drawn out, and that was the one part that made me bump it down to 4 stars instead of 5. I felt like the whole situation at the end was like just really drawn out, really unnecessarily long, but also kind of necessarily long. Hard to say. Parts of it felt unnecessary, parts of it felt necessary. Basically, it's really hard to explain without like spoiling which parts I agreed with, which parts I didn't, but I guess you'll see if you read it. But yes, Roomies by Christina Lauren, 4 stars. Hello, this is future me. Update. After I filmed this video initially, I finished another book. Didn't expect to, but I did, so I wanted to hop in and talk a little bit about that book to include it in this wrap up. And it is We Are the Fire, We Are the Ashes. We Are the Ashes, We Are the Fire by Joanne McCullough. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit before we get into the deck of TBR books. This is my most anticipated book of the year, so I did really want to take a moment to talk about it. Joanne McCullough wrote Blood, Water, Paint, which is one of my favorite books of all time, and so I was really looking forward to this book. I did end up giving it 3 stars, but I wanted to talk a little bit about that rating, and I just shifted my camera a lot, so just ignore that. But okay, so Blood, Water, Paint, I loved it because it was historical fiction. It talked about a real historical figure, Artemisia Gentileschi, and it told her story in a really moving way. It was told completely in verse, and I loved that about it. It was so unique. It was unlike anything I had ever read before, and I loved it. And I kind of wanted that experience again with We Are the Ashes, We Are the Fire, and I definitely didn't get that experience. And I don't mean that the experience I got wasn't good, or it didn't have value, because it did. This book has a ton of value, and I will definitely get into that a little bit. But I think that my rating was definitely influenced by how I felt about what my expectations were. Well, so now I'll get into how this book differs from Blood, Water, Paint. So this takes place over 2 different time periods. So one is modern day, and then one is like 1500s or something. I mean, it's shelved here on my historical fiction, and my historical fiction is in chronological order. This one is about Joan of Arc. So, and it's right after that. So that kind of gives you a frame of reference for what time period this is in, because I can't remember what the time period is myself. In the time period that takes place in the past, it follows the historical figure, and I'm going to butcher her name. I know her last name, I believe it's pronounced de Brousseau, but first name is like Marguerite de Brousseau, something like that. And it follows her. She was a historical figure who basically killed rapists. So, love her. And that portion is told in verse, but the other portion of the book is told as a regular story, so just regular prose, and that is present day. It follows a girl named M and her sister Nora. Is that her name? Her sister's name? Nora? I'm so terrible with names. Her sister was raped on her college campus, and it is following the aftermath of that. So the trial, the verdict, the backlash that her sister is getting from coming forward, and then also the trauma that it wreaks on her family, the whole aftermath of that situation, and the injustice of it all. And then it's mirrored in de Brousseau's story. I loved the historical parts of this. I loved the verse. That gave me the same fulfillment as Blood, Water, Paint, but I didn't get that as much from the contemporary portion of it. I'm pretty open about the fact that I don't really like YA contemporary books. I don't know why. I just have a really hard time getting into them and following the story, and I felt that it was really well written, but it wasn't something that captured my attention. But I'm fairly certain from what I've read from other YA contemporaries that people love, that people would love this book. People would love the YA contemporary portion of this book. It is so empowering. It is so, like, necessary is the word that I would use. Like, it is a very necessary story, and I would highly, highly encourage people to read this. And that was one of the reasons I was, like, hesitant to give it 3 stars, because people need to be reading this book. Like, definitely, it is one of the most powerful narratives I've read about this story. I mean, the way that Joanne McCullough captures the horrors of being a woman and being brutalized as a woman, the way that she captures the terror of that is unlike anything else I've ever read It is so well captured, and I would highly recommend you read it. If you're a woman and you want to feel that narrative, you want to feel heard, but also men need to be reading this book, need to be reading more narratives of women. I felt that this so well captured the horrors of being a woman, of not being able to walk on the street, of not being able to, just live your life the way men do without being harassed. Like, that narrative is so important. So many more men need to be reading that narrative and understanding what it's like to be living in this world as a woman. And so I think this book did a really good job of capturing that, but I thought that it felt a little unbalanced between the historical fiction versus the contemporary. I think that it's hard to find a person who would enjoy both equally because they're so different and fulfill such different roles. I mean, I feel like people who like YA contemporary would want to just focus on the YA contemporary and not really get into the historical fiction of it and the verse portion, which was the part that I enjoyed. And then I was like, oh, I want to learn about the history because historical fiction is my favorite genre. So I feel like it was natural for me to want to read the historical fiction more. But then obviously I understood that the people who wanted the YA contemporary. And so I just feel like it was a really hard thing to do, and I've never seen anybody do something like this before. It was a really interesting book to read, and I highly recommend it. I think it's so criminally underrated, and so I would highly recommend you pick this up. And even if you're nervous about the verse historical fiction part, I mean, I would say that the YA contemporary is more prevalent, is a bigger portion of the story than that historical verse. So, highly recommend you pick this up. Just wanted to pop in and talk about this book really quick. I finished in August, and now I will get you back to past me. And now we'll get into the books that I read for a deck of TBR. So, let's talk about the books that I liked first. So, we will start with Well Met by Jen DeLuca. This is a romance. I read a lot of romance recently. I don't know what's got into me, but this is a cute little romance book about two characters, Emily and Simon. I think that feels right. And basically, Emily is in this very small town helping out her sister who got in a really severe car accident and is temporarily disabled, but her sister has a daughter who needs to be, driven to school and driven to different clubs and practices and stuff, and her niece, her sister's daughter, really wants to participate in this Renaissance fair, but Emily finds out that in order for her niece to be able to participate in the Renaissance fair, they need an adult. Like, an adult also needs to sign up with the youth person in order for the youth person to be able to participate in the Renaissance fair. So Emily has to sign up, but the one caveat to this is she has to work with Simon, who is in charge of the Renaissance fair, and he's really grumpy and mean, and she low-key hates him. This is truly a story of enemies to lovers, and it was really cute. I believe, let's see what I gave it. I'm guessing 4 stars. Oh, okay, I gave this 3 stars, but I did write notes, so let's see why I didn't like this. Okay. I remember my thoughts. So I gave this book 3 stars, and I know a lot of people absolutely adore this book. I didn't get the hype as much as I thought I would. I think the reason it was weird for me was the pacing. The first half felt really, really slow, and a lot of parts seemed really unnecessary. The second half was completely adorable, and I absolutely loved it. But the first half, the pacing was slow, the character development was slow. It seemed like Simon totally flipped the switch, and he was 2 different people in the first half and the second half. I didn't really understand why. There was kind of an explanation, but he was really mean in the first half, and he kind of was a real jerk, and then in the second half he was not at all. He was a completely different person, and it felt like there was no real development into that shift. So I gave it 3 stars because the first half of it was kind of boring to me because there was nothing happening. It was just Simon being a jerk. So 3 stars. I do really want to continue with the series though, because a lot of the other characters really intrigued me, and I know the rest of the series follows some of the other characters from this book, so that really does interest me, and I hope to continue with this soon. The next book that I read for Deck of TBR was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I loved this. I was so excited to read this because this, I feel like, is a modern classic in the realm of romance, and just like everybody else, I absolutely adored it. I've noticed that I tend to really love romances the more diverse they become, the more representation that they pack in, and in this book, the main character, named Stella, has autism, and so a lot of the book is really heavily influenced by her struggle with autism. If you don't know, this book follows Stella and Michael, and basically Stella hires Michael as a male escort to kind of teach her how to be in a relationship because she hasn't had much success in the past. I only gave this 4 stars, and my reason why is because it felt a little unrealistic, and I know that's like kind of a cheap shot when it comes to romances because pretty much all romances ever were unrealistic. And I had the same criticism of Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, even though Talia Hibbert is perfect. It just felt like I wish that there had been more time put into the evolution of Stella's struggles with autism. It kind of seemed like she was struggling in one moment and then everything was magically fixed when it came to this certain person. And I was like, how realistic actually is it for that switch to be so complete? I just felt like it was a little bit very convenient at some points. Obviously, it was absolutely adorable and a beautiful book, and I loved the diversity in it and the representation, and I obviously highly, highly recommend it. And 4 stars is not a bad rating at all. I absolutely loved this book. So, highly, highly recommend, if you haven't read it yet, to do that. And I also want to continue with this series. I'm really, really into romance series recently. I didn't realize this or Well Met was a series when I got into them, but I'm super, super excited that they are now because I really, really want to continue with them. Alright, we're getting to the bottom of the barrel here with Deck of TBR. So first we're going to talk about A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I'm not going to talk about this a lot because I have a whole video, like I've been saying, that's coming out where I talk for a long time about Sarah J. Maas, but I will say I gave this book 3 stars. Now please, please, I'm begging you, don't come for me. Do not come for my blood. I could have given it a much lower rating. You're lucky you got 3 stars out of me. Now, I will confess, I read this in like 2 days. Sarah J. Maas's writing is fully engaging and you want to keep reading, and it is, like, she has a talent for making people continue to read her books. And I absolutely plan on continuing with this series. And yes, I despise myself for it. I'm excited to share with you my thoughts in a video that is coming out and take you along with me on that emotional roller coaster of reading this book. This is the 2nd book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. So I've rated the first 2 books in this series 3 stars. And I don't think it's going to get much better, I'm going to be honest. This is supposed to be the pride and joy of Sarah J. Maas, and I gave it 3 stars. So give me something better, please, Sarah, please. What I do think I've come to the conclusion of when reading this, that is a sentence that I said, is that I will like Throne of Glass more, because the actual parts that I like of this book are where actual plot things are happening, and I know the plot is few and far between. I'm well aware, but I think that I'm willing to give Throne of Glass a try because I think it will balance the romance and the plot better for me, personally. So let me know what you think about that, if you feel that it would be accurate for me, and perhaps I will try out Throne of Glass. In the meantime, I will be finishing the series up to the most recent book, and I hate myself as much as you do right now. What can I say? Next, we are going to talk about The Maidens by Alex. I need to look up how to say his last name. Michaelides. That feels right, Michaelides. Okay, I don't know how to say it, but here's his name. He wrote The Silent Patient, and The Maidens I went into with low expectations because I've heard the mixed reviews about them. I ended up giving it 3 stars, and that does not at all change my impression of Alex. I'm gonna call him Alex now because I don't know how to say his last name. I think he's a genius. I'm gonna say that right now. I fully will read everything Alex writes. I can't call him Alex, like, we're on a first name basis. It's so stupid. Reading this, after reading The Silent Patient, there was obviously big shoes to fill, and I don't think this quite reached the same level of prestige as The Silent Patient did. I did see half of the ending coming, which is surprising because I never see anything coming ever. So that's kind of what made me drop it to 3 stars, even though the other half of the ending that I didn't see coming was absolutely shocking and my mouth was agape. But I did see quite a bit of it coming. And also, the first half of this book, like the first 200 pages of this book, were like I felt like I was drudging through mud. Like, it was really a lot to get to actual action happening. So, I still love you, Alex, but your next book, I need you to step it up, okay? How many more do I have to do? I think we have one more to do. The next book that I have to tell you about is a book I don't want to be killed. I just want to preface this, but I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is absolute garbage. You know what? I don't think this is going to be the book that takes me down. I don't think it's going to be this one. I gave this book one star because I hated it. What else can I say? I hated this book. I don't use that word lightly, but I hated this book. I thought that this series, and I haven't read the last one, but I'm certain that this series could have been a duology, if not one book. Like, this is ridiculous. This was nothing. There was nothing in here that gave me anything. I got nothing out of this book. I'm sorry, because I'm sure Kiera Cass worked really hard on this, but I'm not sure that she didn't stretch a weak plot into 3 books for money. I'm not sure she didn't do that. And honestly, would I blame her if she did that? Probably not. It's a tough economy out there. I don't know what to tell you, but I'm mad at the people on Book Talk and BookTube who are like, this is the height of literature, like, love this series, like, you have to read this series, boosting why? What am I missing? And I know, like, you'll probably agree with me that this is the worst of the 3 books. I haven't even read the last book, but if it's worse than this, then oh my gosh. I know a lot of people in my deck of TBR where I was like, I'm not excited to read this. A lot of people sympathized and were like, yeah, the second one is definitely the worst one. So I know this isn't really an unpopular opinion. The one thing that I've learned this year from reading authors like Holly Black and Morley Bardugo and just having experienced more authors that I admire, like N.K. Jemisin, when you're writing a series, you have to make sure that the next book demands to be written, and in this series there was no demand for another book to be written. There was no reason this should have been a trilogy. This could have been a single book, and maybe it would have been a little lengthy, but it probably would have been worth my time, unlike this. I'm just saying, like, when I finished The Cruel Prince, and for some reason that series is, like, sticking out to me right now, is the one that I want to use for the example, and it's probably not the best example, but when I finished The Cruel Prince, I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, there was so much to be resolved. I need to read the second book. Like, there are things that just need to keep happening. Like, this story isn't over yet. But with this, all I'm watching, all I'm seeing, all I'm reading is 3 people. A woman named America. A woman named America. And 2 men who are completely average. Just being angsty the whole time. Now, what part of that demands a second book? And I understand that for a lot of people there's a nostalgia factor with this book. And that's totally legit. I totally understand. I'm talking about the people who are like, everybody should read this book. This is the best series. This is one of my favorites. This is like you gotta know at some point that this is nothing. Maybe I'm being a little harsh here, but I'm just saying that when you put this series next to some of the greats, you may begin to, like what is it, when you put it up to some of those great authors, like, what does it have? What are you getting from it? I just want to understand. I want to be with you on this, but I'm not, and I refuse to even try. This is 1 star, and I can't even speak about it to you anymore. That is the end of my spiel on the Elite. I will read the 1. I'll say that right now, because I need to be able to fully fledge my stance on this series, and I feel like I don't have the ground to stand on if I haven't completed the series. But absolutely will I not be reading the 4th, 5th, whatever number of books there are. I'm stopping at 3. I can't take any more. And that's where I stand. This is the hill that I will die on. So with that said, I'm done. I've made a video for you, and here it is. Oh, the rankings. I'm dumb. There's a whole other part of this video that I just completely forgot about. Okay, let's see what they were in my video, what I thought, what my prediction was. Okay, so the order that I had the books in the video was as follows. So we had The Elite on the bottom, correct. Then we had The Maidens right above The Elite. Then Well Met. Then we had A Court of Mist and Fury. And then the Kiss Quotient. This is not my final rankings. I would say my final rankings are The Elite on the bottom, then A Court of Mist and Fury, then The Maidens, and then Well Met, and then the Kiss Quotient. So I got 2 right, maybe? Wait a second. I don't know that this is right. Okay, so I would say it's either this way, or simply because of the pacing, I would switch these two and move A Court of Mist and Fury up above The Maidens, simply because the pacing was just really well done, I think, in my opinion. But either way, that is the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to check me out other places, I have Instagram, I have Twitter, I have Goodreads, I have other places that you can find me. And all of those places will be linked in my description below if you feel so inclined to find me in other places. In addition, I have a very special sponsorship that will be going for a while, and that is with Zinf, the glasses company that I am partnered with. They sent me these beautiful frames, which I will have linked in the description below, along with a code that you can use to get 50% off frames and 20% off lenses. So I highly suggest you take advantage of the opportunity to use that code because it will save you so much money on glasses. With that said, that is the end of this video, and I really, really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what the best book and the worst book that you read in August was, and I hope you have a great day, I hope you have a great week, and I hope you have a great life, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye!